there's a certain silence that lives inside people who were never truly loved. As children, it's not the kind of silence that asks for peace. It's the kind that aches. You learn early that love is something you must earn, not something that naturally belongs to you. Every word you spoke, every small action you made, was an attempt to be noticed. And when the people who were supposed to see you didn't, something inside you quietly began to disappear. You stopped asking for affection, not because you didn't need it, but because the rejection became too familiar to bear. You convinced yourself that needing love was weakness, that emotions were dangerous. That being soft made you vulnerable to pain. You start to grow up faster than you should. You become the calm one, the helper, the strong one, not because you wanted to, but because you had to be. The child inside you learned to hide their confusion behind control, their loneliness behind maturity. You begin to mistake independence for strength and silence for safety. You learn to anticipate other people's moods before your own. You learn that approval is a form of survival, but inside there's a constant tension, the part of you that still longs to be held, and the part that knows it probably won't happen. So you become careful with your words, afraid that one wrong sentence might make someone pull away. You laugh when you're supposed to, even when nothing is funny. You adapt, blend in, survive. But late at night, when everything is quiet, the ache returns, not loud or dramatic, just steady, familiar, and real. You start to wonder if love is something you were meant to miss, or if maybe you just learned too early that it doesn't last. And that thought alone becomes a kind of grief, not for what happened, but for everything that never did. When a child grows up without love, the inner world becomes a place of quiet confusion. You begin to question your worth before you even understand what worth means. Every moment feels like a test you can't quite pass, a test where love is the reward and silence is the punishment. You watch the faces of the people around you, searching for clues, wondering what expression might mildly make them stay, what words might finally make them care. But nothing works. And so, you stop trying to be seen and start learning how to disappear in plain sight. Inside, a strange kind of emptiness forms, not just loneliness, but uncertainty. You start to doubt your emotions. You wonder if maybe you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. The world becomes a place where you have to earn every bit of care you receive. And even when you do, it never feels secure. You grow careful with happiness, because you've learned that joy often ends with disappointment. You hesitate to trust, because you know that love can vanish without explanation. As you grow older, this uncertainty hardens into patterns. You become self-reliant, almost obsessively so. You don't ask for help because you don't believe anyone will show up. You don't express your needs because you fear being called needy. You carry the belief that you must handle everything on your own. Emotions, failures, heartbreaks, because no one ever taught you that being cared for was safe. And yet somewhere deep inside, the child you once were still waits. Still hopes that maybe one day someone will see past the armor. Someone will look at you and not turn away. That silent hope becomes both your strength and your burden. It keeps you going, but it also keeps you stuck, always waiting for a love that feels like home, even though you've never known what home truly feels like. So you wander through life, successful, capable, independent, but with a heart that quietly whispers, will anyone ever stay? And that question, though never spoken aloud, becomes the soft background noise of your existence. Psychologically, the absence of love in childhood leaves fingerprints on every part of who you become. The human brain learns about safety, trust, and connection through early attachment, through the eyes that look back at you, the arms that hold you, the voice that soothes you when you cry. When that emotional mirror is missing, your mind adapts, but it does so by rewriting its own rules for survival. You begin to believe that love is conditional, that you must perform to be accepted, or worse, that you simply aren't worth loving at all. This belief doesn't fade with time, It hides behind your behaviors. Maybe you become the person who gives too much, always trying to prove your worth through kindness, through effort, through being good. Or maybe you shut down, pushing others away before they have the chance to leave you. Both are defense mechanisms, your mind's attempt to control what once hurt you. It's not that you don't want love, it's that love feels dangerous. The same warmth that others find comforting feels to you unpredictable. In psychology, this is often seen as a form of attachment trauma. Your nervous system learns to associate intimacy with pain. So even when someone tries to care for you, you brace yourself for rejection. You analyze every silence, every delay in response, every shift in tone. Not because you're paranoid, but because your body remembers what it felt like to be emotionally abandoned. It's a survival strategy that's become second nature. Over time, these patterns can shape how you view the world. You might see relationships as unstable, people as unreliable, and emotions as threats. You crave closeness but fear it. You want to trust, but you can't let go of the old script that says love disappears. And in moments of reflection, you might realize that the hardest person to trust is yourself, because no one ever showed you that your feelings were valid, your needs were normal, your existence was enough. But here's the quiet truth that hides beneath the psychology. None of these patterns mean you're broken. They mean you adapted to survive in an environment that didn't nurture your heart. The brain learns fear quickly, but it can learn safety too. It just takes time, patience, and the gentle realization that you don't have to earn love. You were worthy of it all along. There's an irony to the way pain shapes people who never felt loved as children. On the surface, they often seem composed, strong, independent, even admirable in their self-sufficiency. But underneath that calm exterior is a deep unspoken exhaustion from carrying the weight of their own validation for so long. They've become experts at surviving without comfort, at pretending they don't need what everyone else seems to take for granted. And yet beneath the layers of defense, there's still that small quiet ache, the longing to finally let someone in without fear of being hurt. Sometimes they even laugh about it. That soft, knowing humor people use to cover pain. They'll joke about being emotionally unavailable, or about how they don't do feelings, and everyone laughs. But behind that humor lies a lifetime of learning how to protect themselves from disappointment. They've become fluent in irony. It's how they keep the world at arm's length, without seeming cold. That's the strange mix of humanity and tragedy. People who once needed love the most often become the ones who seem least in need of it. They find subtle ways to cope. Maybe they throw themselves into work chasing achievement because success feels like the closest thing to being loved. Maybe they become caretakers, always fixing, always helping, because if they're useful, they can't be abandoned. Or maybe they drift towards solitude, convincing themselves they prefer being alone, when in truth they just fear the chaos that comes with closeness. Humor becomes a shield, intelligence becomes armor, silence becomes safety. The human mind has an incredible way of disguising pain as personality. What looks like self-control is often fear of rejection. What looks like confidence may actually be the refusal to depend on anyone ever again. Yet there's something profoundly human in that struggle, the way people carry their wounds with grace, even if they never speak of them. And sometimes in small fleeting moments, a kind word, a gentle gesture, a genuine smile, their guard slips. You see the softness that's still there, the part of them that never stopped hoping to be loved. They might laugh it off, change the subject, or hide behind sarcasm. But for that brief second, you glimpse their truth, that behind every wall, no matter how high, there's always someone inside, waiting to be seen, waiting to be understood, and still quietly believing in love. Transformation doesn't arrive like a sudden flash of light. It's slower, quieter, more internal. For people who grew up without love, healing begins not with grand gestures or revelations, but with the smallest shift in perception, realizing that the absence of love was never proof of unworthiness. It takes years, sometimes decades, to unlearn the belief that love must be earned through perfection, silence, or sacrifice. One day they catch themselves apologizing less, or they no longer feel the urge to explain why they exist. That's when healing has already begun, not loudly but deep. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes when you stop trying to be lovable in the way the world once demanded, when you realize that being good enough for someone else was never the same as being whole within yourself. People who never felt loved often carry an invisible contract, an inner rule that says, if I do everything right, maybe this time someone will stay. But over time they begin to see how exhausting that rule is, how it keeps them trapped in an endless loop of proving, pleasing, and hope. The real transformation starts when they tear up that contract and replace it with something simpler. I deserve peace, even if I am not perfect. Healing doesn't erase the past, it teaches you how to hold it differently. The memories don't vanish, but they lose their power to define you. You begin to see your younger self, that lonely, anxious, eager to please child, not as weak but as resilient. You start speaking to that version of you with gentleness instead of judgment. You stop asking, "Why wasn't I loved?" and begin whispering, "I survived without it, and I'm still here." And in that space of quiet understanding, you start noticing beauty again, not in a dramatic way, but in the subtle moments that love-deprived hearts often overlook. The warmth of sunlight through a window, the peace of a long exhale, the way someone's kindness doesn't trigger suspicion anymore, but gratitude. You realize love isn't always something given. Sometimes, it's something you grow inside yourself, patiently, like a garden in the place where the wounds once. And that's the true transformation, when the child who once ached to be loved becomes the adult who knows how to love themselves. Not perfectly, not completely, but finally enough. In the end, everything circles back to love, or the lack of. The lifelong effect of not being loved as a child isn't just about pain, it's about what that pain teaches you. When you've lived without warmth for so long, you start to understand the true weight of gentleness. You stop taking kindness for granted. You realize that every small act of care, every word spoken softly, every moment of being seen, these are miracles in disguise. The person who was never loved learns paradoxically to love more deeply than most, because they know what it means to be unseen. And that realization carries both sadness and strength. You might still feel echoes of the old hunger, the quiet question that asks, "Am I enough yet?" But one day you notice that it doesn't hurt the way it used. You've made peace with the fact that some people will never be able to love you in the way you once needed. You begin to understand that it wasn't your fault, that their inability to love came from their own brokenness, their own unhealed wound. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing what happened. It means freeing yourself from carrying the weight of their mistakes. You no longer chase the love that abandoned you. Instead, you cultivate the love that stays, the one you build from within. There's a certain beauty in this quiet acceptance. It's not the beauty of perfection, but of endurance. You stop needing to fix the past. You stop rehearsing what could have been said or done differently. You begin to exist in the present, gently, deliberate. You learn to find connection, not in grand gestures but in the simple honesty of human presence, a shared silence, a knowing look, a laugh that feels safe. And maybe that's the ultimate healing, not forgetting, but integrate. The child who wasn't loved doesn't vanish. They grow into a witness, a reminder of everything you've endured and overcome. You carry them with compassion now, not shame. They no longer control your choices. They guide your empathy, because once you've known emptiness that deep, you start to fill the world differently, with sincerity, with patience, with the kind of love that asks for nothing in return. And perhaps that's the quiet redemption of it all. You became the love you never received.